So our goal for today is Ayin Dalid, but I'd like to first start on Ayin Gimel and Beis, and you'll see Tanur Rabbanan about 2 lines up before the end of the Amud. We
Okay.
have it.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yomim Shebein Time. So we're talking about a person who gives a get to his wife, and the get should be chal before his death. And once he dies, the get is chal mafreya from the time that he gave the get. Now, let's say he survives X number of days. So Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that he intended that the get should be chal only at the time of his death. So until he actually dies, she's a full-fledged Ashes Ish. However, Rabbi Yossi says, no, Megureshes v'ena Megureshes. She's sort of in a limbo state. You know, she is divorced, but she's not divorced. And that only applies when he actually dies. I mean, if he didn't die, then, you know, she does not acquire the get at all. The get was conditional on the fact that he would die. And even though at the end he did die, Rabbi Yossi still says that until he dies, during this in-between period, she's a suffix megureshes, which means if somebody would have a relationship with her, then that person would have to bring what's called an asham tolui. And again, that's only if at the end her husband died. I mean, if her husband didn't die at the end, the whole enterprise of the get is completely batal or mavutal. And then if a man had a relationship with her, he would have to bring a korban chatas. Tanur Rabbanan, Yomim Shebein Tayim. During this period of time, in between the giving of the get and the death of the husband, Baila Zakai v'Mitziyasu Ma'asiyadeva first Nedoreh of the Yarsha. What we're saying is that she has all the halachas of the status of a married woman. And what that means is that the Baal is zoche if she finds a lost object or if she earns wages, and he can null and void her nidarim. If she dies, he inherits her. And here we start Daf Ayin Daled. Umetamila, if he's a Kohen, he will bury her and he will desecrate his Kedushas Kun. As long as he's still alive, in that period of time between the giving of the get and his death, Harei Ishto Ki Ishto L'chol Davar. So what exactly does this get accomplish? And the answer is which means that this get will be chal, what we call samuch l'misaso, right before he dies. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda maintains that her status during this entire period of time until he dies is that of an Ashes Ish. And we mentioned that earlier here on Daf Ayin Gimel Mit Beis, that Ma'ivos on the Yom Rav Yehuda Omer Ke'Ashes Ish Chol Tvarel. It's only when he dies, then she becomes a grusha, and there's no need for a replacement of the get. Rabbi Meir Omer Bilasa Tluya. Now, we don't understand exactly what Rabbi Meir has in mind by Bilasa Tluya, so let's leave out Rabbi Meir for just a moment. And we're going to fast forward to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi Omer be'ilasa safek, which means that if a man has a relationship with her before the death of her husband, that's called a korban asham. Now, excuse me for just 1 minute. Shalom Aleichem, how are you? Okay, good. So again, let's go over this. According to Rabbi Yossi, be'ilasa safek, which means that if a man has a relationship with her during that time period, he has to bring an asham tolui. Because on the one hand, Rabbi Yossi is really in the court of Rabbi Yehuda that we saw already before, which means that when a person says that this get should be chal me'ei shani ba'olam, he means that the get should be chal 1 hour before he dies. And every single hour is a suffix, whether it's the hour before he dies. Nobody can predict exactly when he's going to die. And therefore, anyone who has a relationship with her, he's having a relationship with a suffix ashes ish. And therefore, he's chayiv and asham tolu. If he would have a relationship with her right before the man's death, he would be chayiv. He would be the get would already be chal, but we don't know whether it's shah achas lifnei moso, so therefore it's always going to be an asham tolu. However, we skipped Rabbi Meir. Let's go back to Rabbi Meir. Bilasa tluya. In other words, Rabbi Meir holds that me'ei shani ba'olam, when he says the get should be right before my death, what he meant to say was that if he'll die, then the get should be chal lemafreya retroactively from the moment of nesina. And therefore, when someone has a relationship with this woman during that time period, then the truth is that he's potter if the man is going to die, because once the man dies, the get is chal lemafreya from shas nesina, and he had a relationship with her after the nesina. However, if he doesn't die, then the get is not chal, and a man who had a relationship with her is having a relationship with an HSC, she's chayiv chatos. So Rabbi Meir has the law of the excluded middle. He will not accept Rabbi Yossi's asham tolui because mimanavshach. Either he is having a relationship with a woman who's already a grusha, and therefore he's potter and gansen, or alternatively, he's having a relationship with an HSC if the husband doesn't die. Rabbi Yossi says no. During this period of time, she's in a suffix limbo situation, because the get is going to be chal 1 hour before his death, and we don't know at any particular moment in time whether that's 1 hour before his death. Rabbi Yehuda, on the other hand, holds that the get is only chal right when he dies, and until he dies, she's a full-fledged Eshesish. And then we get to the Chacham. The Chachamim omrim megureshes v'eina megureshes ubilvad sheyomos. Chachamim embrace the shita of Rabbi Yossi that the ba'aleh is chayiv asham toli. In fact, we don't even know ostensibly why the Chachamim pointed out megureshes v'eina megureshes. It's exactly identical to Rabbi Yossi. If he doesn't die, let's say, for example, he's ill with a certain machla, lo aleinu, and he doesn't die from that machla, then she's not megureshes, and the ba'aleh is chayiv chatos. Okay, so the Gemara is going to explain what's the difference between the Chacham and Rabbi Yossi. So far, let's assume Chachamim are reiterating identical with Rabbi Yossi. My ika ben Rabbi Meir le Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yochanan Asham Tolui, Rabbi Meir lo Maisi Asham Tolui, and the Rabbi Yossi Maisi Asham Tolui. As we said before, Rabbi Meir holds either he's off the hook because with the death the get is chal mafreya, or if he doesn't die, he's chayiv chatos. But there's no room for an Asham Tolui. Rabbi Yossi Maisi Asham Tolui. Rabbi Yossi holds that the intention of the Baal was that the get should be chal 1 hour before he dies, and every hour is a suffix, whether it's an hour before he dies. So he brings it Asham Tolui. Chacham Omer Megoresh V'eina Megoresh Chacham Hainu Rabbi Yossi. What's the difference between Chachamim and Rabbi Yossi? Ika beinayu de Rabbi Zera. Okay, now we get to the sugya of Rabbi Zera. The Omer Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Yomi, Omer Shmuel Kol, Malkum Shomer Chacham Megoresh V'eina Megoresh Bailo Chayav V'mizono Seha. What's the deal and the status of a woman who's a suffix megureshes? You would say that the Baal says, I'm not going to pay you for mizonos. I'm not going to support you because hamotzi mechavero olav harayah. Go prove that the get is not chal. And according to Rabbi Meir, the get will be chal afreya. And therefore he's saying that the get will be chal. You don't have rights to mizonos. Comes along Rab Zeir and he says, no. A suffix megureshes is going up against the chazaka, meaning that up until the moment in time that we know she's certainly megureshes, she's in a status of collecting mizonos. He's chayav in mizonos. So when he gives her a get and he says to her, "Me'es shani ba'olam," which according to Chachamim, it means that the Baal is chayav b'mizonos during that period of time, because until the get is chal, he continues status quo to be chayav b'mizonos. And that's what the Chachamim meant when they said megureshes v'eina megureshes. It means that she's not megureshes as far as the chiyuv mizonos is concerned. Rabbi Yossi, on the other hand, holds that even if I accept the din of Rab Zera, but nevertheless, he holds that the Baal is not chayiv in mizonos. Why? Because Bi'las a suffix. Once we say that the Baal has to bring it Hashem Tolin, and now we have a suffix, she's in the gather of Hamotzi Michal Varaya. She has to prove that the Baal is in fact chayiv in mizonos. And this leads us to the Mishnah here on Daf Ayin Dal. A man says to his wife, "Harei zegi techal menashe titni li masayim zuz." The t'nai was that she'll pay him up masayim zuz. This is really coercing her in order to get her get. It's really blackmail. Harei megureshes vititen. She has to pay up the Masayim Zuz based on the Tanai that he made. And he didn't set a time period by which she has to deliver the money. She'll have to come up with the money at some point. Otherwise, the Gerushin is not valid. But if he says to Almanasha, Titni li mikan v'ad shloshim yom, I want the money to be forked over to me within the next 30 days, if the 30-day period passed and she has not forked over the Masayim Zuz, Eina Megureshes. The get is not Chal. A story that took place in a place called Sidon. It's Talisi. It's Talisa. What happens if a man gives a get almanas that she will give him a certain object, and that object gets lost? So on the one hand, she didn't fulfill the Tanai because the object is lost, she can't hand it over to him. But on the other hand, it has a market value. The Chacham say that his Tanai was not on that specific beged, but rather on its value. And therefore she could pay up its value in currency, and the get is chal. Gemara asks the kasha now, my vetiten. What did the Mishnah mean when it says that she's megureshes and she'll give up the matzayim zuz paper? Rabbi Yehuna Amar vehi titen. The Mishnah has in mind that she's megureshes immediately at the time of the Nesina, but on condition that she'll fulfill the Tanai and she'll fork over the Masayim Zuz. That means, according to Rav Huna, when he says Almanas, that's a Tanai. It's not Ma'akiv the Chalos Haget, meaning anytime a person says Almanas, according to Rav Huna, it means that the get should be Chal now, on the condition that at some later period of time, the condition will be fulfilled. That's the Shita of Rav Huna. So Rav Huna understands that Almanas is Kimiomer Achshav Dami, as if he's saying now the get will be chal, but on the condition that you pay me the money. Rabbi Yehuda Omer L'Kshetite. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Almanas means that when you pay up, but not until that point, then the get will be chal. So there's a tremendous nafkamina now between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. What is her status now before she gives him the Masayim Zuz? According to Rav Yehuda, she's an Eishes Ish. According to Rav Huna, if at the end of the day she will fork over the Masayim Zuz, then she's a Megureshes. The Gemara now clarifies. My Beinayu. Ika Beinayu shenikra get osha avad. What happens if the get disintegrates? It gets ripped up to shreds. It's lost. It's not around. She has not yet paid up the Masayim Zuz. Let's try to analyze this Gemara on our own. According to Rav Huna, the get is chal immediately. So even if the get goes up in smoke, it's irrelevant as long as she pays the Masayim Zuz. According to Rav Yehuda, the get will only be active and valid to generate gerushin only when she gives the Masayim Zuz. By the time she gives the Masayim Zuz, the get is gone, and therefore the gerushin is not chal. Rav Huna Omar v'titein v'enetzrichem any get sheni. Once she pays up the Masayim Zuz, the get is chal. Rabbi Yehuda Omar l'kshetitein, the get will only be chal when she gives the Masayim Zuz, and therefore if it was nikra or avad before she gave the Masayim Zuz, tzricha imena get sheni, and she's an Eishes Ish until she gets the get sheni. However, there is a Tosfos on Daf Ayin Daled Amud Beis that sort of throws a monkey wrench here. It's the top Tosfos. He quotes the Ri that even according to Rabbi Yehuda, she's a Safek Megureshes. Strange. Let's go on. The Gemara now wants to bring an analogy, another case where we have Machlok between Rav Huna and Rabbi Yehuda in an analogous case, and then try to figure out why we needed both cases and we cannot derive one from the other. Tanan nami gabi kiddushin. So we're learning now in Mishnah Kiddushin Daf Samach. Ha'omer le'isha hareat mekudeshes li. I'm going to give you now a pruta for Kiddushin. Almanas she'ete loch masayim zuz. I agree and I commit myself to pay you up 200 zuz. And the Mishnah establishes harei mekudeshes v'yite. She's already married, and he'll give her the Masayim Zuz. V'itmar, my v'yitein. At what point is the Kiddushin valid? Rav Huna Omar v'hu she'yitein. The Kiddushin is chal now, but it's conditioned on the fact that he will pay her Masayim Zuz and fulfill his condition. Rabbi Yehuda Omar lich she'yitein. The Kiddushin is only valid and only takes effect when the Baal coughs over the 200 zuz. My Beinai, we can Beinai Pashta Yoda V'Kibla Kiddushin Me'achir. What happens if she receives Kiddushin from another man? Rav Huna Amar V'hu she'yitein. The Kiddushin are chal immediately to the Rishon, and the Sheni therefore cannot be Mekadosh her. She's already Mekudeshes. Tana B'Almahu. He has to fill the Tanai, which he'll do, and she's Mekudeshes from the time of the Kiddushin. And Mekayim Tanai V'Yos. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Lich She'yitein. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the Kiddushin is not chal until he pays up the Masayim Zuz. And therefore, if she accepted Kiddushin from someone else, that is a valid Kiddushin Utzricha. Why do we need the machlok between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda twice? Once in Gerushin and once in Kiddushin. If we only had it by Kiddushin, then we would have said Bahaka Omar Rav Huna. That's where Rav Huna says that in Kiddushin, the Kiddushin is chal immediately with the nesina of one single prut of Ushayite, and later on he'll fulfill the condition Mishum Delik Kruvakasa. He wants to marry her. And if he wants to marry her, he wants the Kedushin to be Chal immediately. He is excluding her from issues. Then, you know what? He's been married to her for such a long time. It's a little bit difficult for him to part with his wife. And therefore, he delays the Gerushin. Rabbi Huda. I might think that Rav Huna would be moded to Rabbi Yehuda. Then in this case, it's only after he gives the mas. It's only after she gives the Masayim Zuz, that's when the Gerushin Bichal. Therefore, Rav Huna had to teach me that even in the case of Gerushin, he wants the get to Bichal immediately, and the most will be forthcoming later on. V'yesh meaning Abi Gerushin. So until now, we had a chiddush, and now we have to have a chiddush in the other direction. That if we only had this machlokas Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda in Gerushin, Baha, I would have said that in Gerushin Kama Rav Huna v'hi tite, that the Gerushin should be chalmam t'chum de lo kosiv limitva. After the Gerushin, he's not embarrassed to demand his mos. He made it tonight that she would pay up Masayim Zuz. He's complete, right? He's divorcing us, separating the relationship. He will not be embarrassed to demand the Masayim Zuz. And therefore, there's no need to delay the Chalos Gerushin. It's not like he has to hold something over her head, like an albatross around her neck and say, look, you want the Gerushin to be Chal, cough up the Masayim Zuz. No. He's very secure. He'll be able to, without inhibition and reservation, he'll be able to demand the Masayim Zuz. The Isha, the wife, is embarrassed. She's inhibited to demand the Masayim Zuz from her husband. Is Ema Module Rabbi Yehuda? Maybe Rabbi Huna is Module to Rabbi Yehuda, that she doesn't want the Gerushin to be, the Kedusha to be Chal until he gives her the Masayim Zuz, because she's not going to be able to overcome her inhibitions and embarrassment to demand the Masayim Zuz. So let the Kedushin be Chal when he pays up the Masayim Zuz, like Rabbi Yehuda. Therefore, we need Rav Huna to teach me that even in the case of Kedushin, the Chalos Kedushin is immediately Chal from the beginning. Fine. Now we understand why we need these two halachas, and Rav Huna is of the opinion of Yishit Titein. And now the Gemara wants to clarify, why does Rabbi Yehuda hold Lichshet Titein? And he has to teach me his halacha twice. Iash meaning Abi Kiddushin. If Rabbi Yehuda had only told me in Kiddushin that the Kiddushin is only Chal when he coughs over the Masayim Zuz Behakam, Rabbi Yehuda, she doesn't want the Kiddushin to be Chal now, because she realizes that she's embarrassed and inhibited to demand the most. So she wants to have something over him, and she says, you know what? I don't want this Kiddush to be Chal until you cough over the Masayim Zuz. Avol Gabi Gerushin Kaven Delo Kosif Limitba. After the Gerushin, the Baal has no inhibitions to demand payment of the 200 Zuz. Ema Module Lirafuna. Maybe the Gerushin therefore should be Chal immediately with the Nesinas again, and therefore we need Rabbi Yehuda to teach me that the Gerushin is only Chal when the Mos are paid up and the Isha gives them Masayim Zuz. Now we go the other way around in Rabbi Yehuda. The Iyashme'ina of Rabbi Yehuda would have taught his din L'gabi Gerushin. Oh, Bechakam Rabbi Yehuda, that's in Gerushin where Rabbi Yehuda says L'chayite, that only when she gives him the Masayim Zuz, Mishum Durichuka Kasi, he's divorcing his wife, and therefore it's hard for him to to divorce his wife after all these years of marriage. So he wants to extend the marriage, and therefore the Gerushin will not be Chal until the giving of the Mos. He wants to marry her. Maybe he should be Moda to Rabbi Yehuda that the Kiddush should be Chal immediately, because it's Likurva, is Tricha. Therefore I need both as we saw before Rav Huna, and now as we see Rav Yehuda to give us both halachas in Gerushin and in Kedushin. Meisvei, the Gemara raises the following kasha on Rabbi Yehuda, who says that the Gerushin is not chal until she forks over the money. We learned in a brisa, a man says to his wife, I raise a gittin. Almanach shetitni li masayim zuzafal pisha nikra get uneva migureshes. Even though the get is lost and she hasn't yet forked over the masayim zuz, the Gerushin is chal. And the very moment that she fulfills the Tanai of the Gerushin and forks over the masayim zuz, the Gerushin is chal, even though there's no get. However, le'achar lo tinasei ad shetitni. She should not get married to someone else, even though technically she can, until she actually fulfills the Tanai and gives over the Masayim Zuz. Because if she won't be Makayim the Tanai, and at the end she doesn't give the Masayim Zuz, then the get is not Chal, and she's living with an Eishes, and he's living with an Eishes. But in any event, this is against Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the Gerushin is not Chal until the Nesinas Hamos. Here it says that even though the get is gone at the time of the Nesinas Hamos, the Gerushin is Chal. And furthermore, the Gemara raises now a second objection to Rabbi Yehuda. Tanya, we learned in the brisa, a man says to his wife, raise a gitei chamanashe titni li masayim zuz. Umeis. Now we're talking about a case of yibum, which means that the husband died before she gave over the Masayim Zuz, and he has no children. He has a brother without children. Nasna, if she gave over the Mos and she was Makayim the Tanai, the Gerushin is Chal v'yenis kukal yavam. She doesn't fall for Yibum, she's a Grusha. Lo nisana. If, on the other hand, she didn't fork over the Mos, and when he dies, she's Kukal Yava, because the Gerushin was never Chal, there was no Kiyama Tanai. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, no senes li aviv, oli achiv, oli ech ben akrov. According to Rav Shimon Gamliel, she could pater herself from Yibum and be Mekayim the get, by giving Mos. And even if her husband died, she can fork over the Mos to his father, to his brothers, or to one of his relatives. And therefore through that giving over the money, she's Makayim the Tanai and the get, she's Megureshes, and of course she's Enes Kukal Yibum. So the Gemara is now medayek from this brisa. Ad kan lo pligi. The machlok is here between the Tanakh of Shimon Gamliel. At what point in time is the Gerushin Chal? Everybody agrees that if she's Makayim the Tanai, then she's considered a Grusha from the time of the Nesinas Haget, like Rav Huna against Rabbi Yehuda. Ella, what is the machlokes? They're arguing about the intention of the Baal. Demar Sover, according to Tanakh, when he makes a Tanai that she will fork over Masayim Zuz, is leave alo the Yarshim. In order for you to fulfill your Tanai, you have to give me the most. The fact that you gave it to my Yarshim is not considered a Kiyama Tanai. And the get is therefore not Chal, and therefore she needs Yibum. Umar, but Rav Shimon Gamliel Sovar, he's not being makpid that the money be forked over to him, but rather leave afil Yarshai to me or to my heirs. And therefore, even if she gave the Masayim Zuz to the heirs, to the Yorshim, she fulfilled the Tanai and the Gerushin's Kalam Afraid from the time of the Nesinas Haget, when the Baal was alive. L'kuli Almabiyah, Tno Havi. Everybody agrees, whether it's the Tanakh of Shimon Gamliel, that immediately with the Nesinas Haget, the Gerushin is Chal. And the Mos, giving over the Mos, the Masayim Zuz is only a Tanai. And therefore, she could be Makayim that Tanai even after the death of her husband. Question is whether she was Makayim the Tanai by giving it to the Yarshim, that's a machlokas. But you can't say that the Gerushin is Chal B'shas Nesinas Hamos, that's after the Misas Haba. And we have a principle, ain't get Lachar Misa. It's true to the Rabbi Yehuda, we now have a kasha according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that the Gershon Zachal until the time that the Mos are forked over. And Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, don't ask me a kasha from the Brisa. Hamani Rebbe, these Brisos reflect the Shita of Rebbe. And Rebbe is the one who holds that the Gershon is Chal immediately. And that's the Shita Rav Huna. But guess what? Says Rav Yehuda, the Chacham never accepted the Shita of Rebbe. Ti Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rebbe, Kol Homer Amanaska Omer Me'achshav Dami. Whenever a person says the words Almanas, it means he wants the chalos to be chal l'mafreya. And immediately with the giving of the get is going to be chal. And he doesn't mean to be makayim the get only after the kiyama tanai, but rather he wants a me'achshav. Upligi Rabbana Levi Noah the Amik Rabbana. The Rabbana rejected the shita of Rebbe. They hold that there's no chalos until the kiyama tanai. Vano the Amrik Rabbanan. And Rabbi Yehuda says that I accept the sheet of the Chachamim, and the Ma'aseh Gershon is Achal until the moment of Kiyum Hatnai. Which means the Sina Sambos. Amar Abzera Ki Avida B'Bavel. I was in Bavel. I'm Rinon, and I said over there in Bavel, Hadi Amar Rav Huna Amar Rabbi Kol Omer Almanaske Omer Me'achshav Dami. That when a person says Almanas, it means that he wants the chalos to be l'mafreya for the time of the Nesino Pligi Rabban Alei, and the Rabban rejected Ki Sliki. But when I got up to Eretz Yisrael, Ashke Chase, I met Rav Asi. And he was saying, Hakol Modin Bi Omer Almanaska Omer Me'achshav Dami, that there was never an argument about this principle. And both Rebbe and Chachamim unanimously accepted the principle that if he says Almanas it's l'mafreya Kime'achshav Dami. Lo nechluku. So what was the machlokus between the Chachamim and Rebbe? Ela me'ayom u'liachar misa. If a man says that the Gerish should be chal today and after I die, so Rabbanan say it's a suffix. We don't know what he had in mind. Does he want the chalos to be chal now, on the condition that he dies, or when he says uliachar misa, he's rescinding and being choser bo, he doesn't want to get to be chal now until liachar misa, and then we have principle ain't get lachar misa. So Rebbe holds that his kavanah certainly is litlos bitnai sheyavos, and therefore the get is chal me'achshav. Okay, then I think we'll stop here. Well, it's 8:45.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Shkoya. Sorry for the time.
Shkoya. Thanks. And sorry about the interruption before.
No problem. No problem.
Okay, and we should hopefully get to Mashiach before Tisha B'Av.
Amen. Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.